She called me a walking ATM, my own daughter. Typed those words while I was spending $17,000 on her luxury vacation. They thought the old carpenter was too broken to fight back. They were about to learn that I don't just build things, I also know how to tear them down. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. It helps more than you know. Let me back up and tell you how it all fell apart. It started on Christmas Eve. The smell of pine needles and cinnamon filled the air. It was a scent that always brought Sarah, my late wife, right back to me. The house felt warm, hopeful. For the first time in a long time, I thought the silence was finally ending. I couldn't have been more wrong. I stood in the kitchen looking at the turkey I had just pulled from the oven. It was perfect, golden brown, glistening, just the way Sarah taught me. I've spent 40 years building things, houses, cabinets, furniture. My hands are rough, covered in calluses and old scars. I'm a simple man. I like sawdust and quiet evenings, but I wasn't prepared for the silence that had filled my life since Sarah passed 3 years ago. Cancer took her fast. The silence she left behind was a heavy, cold blanket. This Christmas was supposed to be different. It was supposed to be loud again. My daughter Chloe was coming over. She was bringing her husband Mark, and Mark's parents Robert and Linda. I'd spent the whole week preparing. I cleaned the house until it shone. I put up the big tree in the living room, the one Chloe always loved. I even polished the good silverware, Sarah's silverware. I checked my watch. 6 p.m. They should be here any minute. And then there was the gift, the one that changed everything. It was tucked under the tree, a small white envelope that held something massive, a 10-day luxury cruise in the Caribbean, leaving December 26th, for Chloe, Mark, Robert, and Linda. All expenses paid, by me. The total cost was $17,000. $17,000. It still made my stomach twist when I thought about it. That's a lot of money for a guy like me. It was most of the savings I had earmarked for a new roof on my workshop, and maybe finally replacing my old Ford truck, which was more rust than paint these days. But I did it for Chloe. I did it for family. Or so I told myself. The truth was much uglier. The truth was, I was desperate to belong. It started a few months ago, a cool October afternoon. Chloe showed up at my workshop. She didn't call first. She never did anymore. I was sanding a cherry wood cabinet. The air was thick with the smell of sawdust. "Hey, Dad," she said. She didn't look at me. She picked up a small wooden bird I had carved. Her nails were painted bright red, aggressive red. "Hey, sweetie, what brings you by?" She put the bird down carelessly. She started twisting her wedding ring around her finger, round and round. A nervous habit she developed after marrying Mark. "I need to talk to you," she said, her voice small. I stopped the sander. The sudden silence felt heavy. "Is everything okay? Is Mark all right?" "He's stressed, Dad. So stressed." Her eyes were wide, pleading, the same look she used when she was 8 and wanted a puppy. Mark worked in digital marketing. I didn't really understand what that meant. It seemed to involve expensive suits and a lot of talking about brand image. He always made me feel small, like I was a rough draft, and he was the finished product. He looked at my work boots and then his shiny Italian shoes. The look said it all. I was the past. He was the future. "His work is so demanding," Chloe continued. She stepped closer. Her perfume was expensive, too strong for the workshop. "He never gets a break, and his parents, Robert and Linda, they've never even seen the ocean." I leaned against the workbench. I waited. I knew where this was going. I started rubbing the old scar on my thumb, my own nervous habit. "We need a vacation, Dad. A real family vacation. All of us." "A vacation? Where?" I asked, trying to keep my voice even. I already felt the pressure building in my chest. "A Caribbean cruise. 10 days. It's perfect." "A cruise, Chloe, those are expensive." "I know, Dad, but it would mean the world to them. To Mark. He needs this." She saw the hesitation in my eyes. She moved in for the kill. "And I want us to bond," she said softly. "We're a family now. Mark's family and us." Family. That word meant everything to me. Sarah always used to say, "Thomas, money is just wood and nails. You use it to build something beautiful, and nothing is more beautiful than family." I looked at my daughter, my little girl. I wanted her to be happy. I wanted to be part of this new, extended family. But $17,000. It felt like a betrayal of my own hard work. Chloe played her trump card, the one that always worked. "Mom would have wanted this, Dad." She always said we should make memories. That was low, using Sarah against me. But it worked. It always worked. I sighed. A deep, heavy sigh of surrender. Okay, Chloe, I'll do it. Her face lit up. The anxiety vanished instantly, replaced by pure, unadulterated excitement. Oh, thank you, Dad. Thank you. You're the best. She hugged me, a quick, tight hug, but it felt shallow, hollow, like she was hugging a bank account, not a person. She left the workshop, already texting Mark the good news. I stood there alone, surrounded by the sawdust. A cold dread crept into my heart. I thought I was building a bridge. I didn't realize I was paying for the demolition crew. I remembered a warning I had ignored. Right after the wedding, Sarah's sister, Aunt Clara, had come for lunch. Clara was sharp. She saw things others missed. She never sugarcoated the truth. She had taken my hand across the table. Her eyes were serious. Concerned. Thomas, she had said, her voice low. Be careful with Mark. He's slick. Too slick. I had pulled my hand away. I was offended. Defensive. He's a good man, Clara. He loves Chloe. I'm not saying he doesn't, Clara replied, stirring her coffee, never breaking eye contact. But I heard things about his business dealings. He's always chasing the next big thing, but nothing ever seems to stick. She leaned closer. I met one of his old partners, a man named Jackson. He said Mark left him high and dry, took the money and ran, ruined him. Jackson. I filed the name away. It felt insignificant at the time. It wouldn't stay that way. Clara looked me straight in the eye. Love doesn't pay the bills, Thomas. And ambition can look a lot like greed. Just keep your eyes open. Don't let him bleed you dry. I didn't listen. I didn't want to believe it. I thought she was just being protective. Cynical. Now I wondered if she saw the storm coming long before I did. Now back to Christmas Eve, 6:30 p.m. The turkey was starting to cool. The gravy I made from scratch was forming a skin. I poured myself a small glass of wine. My hand was shaking slightly. Just nerves, I told myself. They were probably just stuck in holiday traffic. The roads were always busy on Christmas Eve. But the silence in the house told a different story. A story I wasn't ready to hear. I walked into the living room. The tree lights twinkled cheerfully. Red, green, and gold. I remembered when Chloe was little, how she'd insist on hanging the star herself. I'd lift her up, her little legs kicking in the air. She'd laugh, a sound brighter than any Christmas light. Where was that little girl now? And who was this woman wearing her face? The house was too quiet. The silence felt heavy. It pressed down on me like a physical weight. The ticking of the grandfather clock in the hallway was deafening. This wasn't just traffic anymore. This felt deliberate, intentional. I picked up my phone. No messages, no calls. I dialed Chloe's number. My fingers felt thick and clumsy. It rang once, twice, then straight to voicemail. Her cheerful recorded message cut through the silence like a knife. Hi, you've reached Chloe. Leave a message. Hey, sweetie, I said, trying to keep my voice light, casual. My throat felt tight. Just checking in. Dinner's ready whenever you are. The turkey is looking lonely. Love you. I hung up. My reflection stared back at me from the dark phone screen. An old man, worried eyes. Deep lines etched into my face. I tried Mark's number. I didn't want to. I never wanted to talk to Mark. But I had to know. Same thing. Voicemail. His message was short. Efficient. Arrogant. Mark here. I'm busy. Text me. Busy. Too busy for Christmas Eve. Too busy for the man who just dropped $17,000 on him. I didn't leave a message. A cold knot started forming in my stomach. This wasn't like Chloe. She was usually late. Sure, but she always called. She always texted. She always answered her father, until now. Maybe there was an accident. The roads were slick with a light dusting of snow that had fallen earlier. My heart hammered against my ribs. Panic started to rise, sharp and metallic in my throat. I started pacing the floor. The hardwood creaked under my work boots. The sound echoed in the empty house. Back and forth, kitchen to living room. Living room to kitchen. 7:45 p.m. The panic was turning into something else. Something cold and heavy. Dread. I couldn't just sit there anymore. The anxiety was eating me alive. I grabbed my coat and keys. Their house was only a 15-minute drive away. I'd just swing by. Make sure everything was okay. Maybe their phones had died. Maybe they'd fallen asleep watching a movie. I was lying to myself, and I knew it, but the lie was better than the silence. The drive was tense. Every siren in the distance made me jump. The festive lights on the houses seemed too bright, too cheerful. They mocked my fear. They mocked my loneliness. I pulled onto their street. My stomach tightened into a hard ball. Their house was dark, completely dark. No lights on upstairs or downstairs. My headlights swept across the driveway. Their car, the expensive SUV I had co-signed the loan for, was gone. Confused, I parked on the street. The engine ticked as it cooled. The sound was loud in the quiet neighborhood. Maybe they went to Robert and Linda's house first. But why wouldn't they call me? It made no sense. It was Christmas Eve. We had plans. I had cooked dinner. I had set the table. I stood there staring at the dark house. The cold wind bit at my face. It felt like the whole world had gone silent. Then I saw him. My neighbor David was taking out his trash. David and I had been friends for 30 years. He was a retired accountant, a good man. He always looked out for me, especially since Sarah died. "Hey, David," I called out, walking over to him. The snow crunched under my boots. It sounded too loud. "Merry Christmas Eve." "Thomas, you too," he nodded, adjusting his hat. He looked at me, then at the dark house. His expression shifted. He looked uncomfortable. "What are you doing out here?" "I thought you had the whole family over tonight." "Yeah, I thought so too," I said. My voice sounded strange, distant. "But they aren't answering their phones, and their house is dark. Have you seen Chloe and Mark?" David frowned. He leaned against his recycling bin. He hesitated. "Oh yeah, I saw them," he said slowly. I waited. My heart pounded. "They left hours ago." "Left?" The word hung in the freezing air. "Left where?" "Don't know." David shrugged. A big black airport limo pulled up around 3 p.m. A limo. They had a ton of luggage. Looked like they were going on a big trip. My blood ran cold. The world seemed to tilt sideways. I gripped David's fence to steady myself. I couldn't breathe. "A trip? Today?" "The cruise isn't until the 26th. Why would they leave 2 days early? And why wouldn't they tell me?" "Yeah, they seemed really excited," David continued. He was oblivious to the panic rising in me. Oblivious to the fact that he was dismantling my world, piece by piece. Mark was yelling into his phone. David said, chuckling slightly, something about getting an early start on the holiday and first class all the way. I saw Robert and Linda get into the limo too. First class, the words I had paid for. They stung like wasps. He paused. Actually, it was a bit strange. There was another guy there too, briefly. Looked really nervous. Shabby coat. Mark met him by the mailbox. Handed him a thick envelope. The guy rushed off quick. Another guy? An envelope? A payoff? My mind raced. Was it related to Mark's business? The shady dealings Clara mentioned. Jackson? I figured you knew, David added. Maybe they were heading to a hotel near the airport? A hotel? At 3:00 p.m. 3 hours before they were supposed to be at my house for Christmas Eve dinner. And a mysterious exchange of money. The betrayal was starting to sink in, cold and sharp. I managed a weak smile, a mask I forced onto my face. My cheeks ached with the effort. Right. Must have slipped my mind. I lied. The words tasted like ash. Thanks, David. Merry Christmas. I turned away before he could see the tears welling up in my eyes. I walked back to my truck. My legs felt like lead. I couldn't feel my fingers. The cold wasn't coming from the weather. It was coming from inside me. Why wouldn't they tell me? Why would they leave on Christmas Eve, knowing I was waiting, knowing I had cooked a feast? Unless they never intended to come at all. The thought hit me like a punch to the gut. They had planned this. They had lied to me. I drove home in a daze. The world outside my truck window was a blur of colors and lights. I felt numb, detached, like I was watching a movie of someone else's life. A sad, pathetic movie. I walked back into my house. The smell of the turkey, which had seemed so inviting earlier, now made me feel sick. I looked at the dining table, set for 5. 5 empty chairs. 5 polished wine glasses. 5 Christmas crackers. A tableau of abandonment. I was alone on Christmas Eve. I sat down in my armchair, the one facing the fireplace. I didn't bother lighting a fire. The coldness in my chest was enough. I looked at the spot under the tree where the envelope had been. The confusion started to curdle into hurt, and the hurt started to harden into anger. A cold, sharp anger I hadn't felt in years. Why lie? Why sneak away like thieves in the afternoon? Why treat me like an afterthought, like a fool? I started cleaning up the dinner I hadn't served. I wrapped the turkey in foil. My movements were mechanical, robotic. I was trying not to think, trying not to feel the crushing weight of disappointment, the humiliation of being abandoned by my own daughter. I put the side dishes in containers, the cranberry sauce, the mashed potatoes, the stuffing, all wasted. All that effort, wasted, as I was cleaning the kitchen counter, wiping away the crumbs of a meal that never happened. I saw it, tucked behind the blender, plugged into the wall, almost hidden from view. Chloe's iPad. She must have left it here last weekend. She came over to help me organize some old photos of her and Sarah. She was always forgetting it. I picked it up. The screen felt cool under my fingertips. I needed answers. I needed to understand why my own daughter would do this to me, why she would betray me like this. I hesitated. Invading her privacy felt wrong. I wasn't a snooper. Sarah raised me better than that. We believed in trust, in honesty, but trust and honesty had left the building. In a limo, at 3:00 p.m., the image of the limo pulling away wouldn't leave my mind. The silence of my house, the 5 empty chairs. The betrayal was too deep. The pain was too sharp. The need to know outweighed my conscience. I had to know the truth, even if it destroyed me, and it almost did. I opened the iPad. It wasn't locked. Chloe never bothered with passcodes. She was too trusting, or maybe just careless. Maybe she didn't think I was smart enough to look. Maybe she didn't think I mattered enough to hide things from. I opened her messages. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might crack a rib. I was still clinging to the desperate hope that this was all a big misunderstanding, a scheduling mix-up, a surprise. And that's when I saw it, a group chat thread near the top. The title made me stop breathing. Operation Kirby and Escape. Escape. They were escaping from me. The participants were Chloe, Mark, Robert, and Linda. My hands trembling. I opened the chat. I started scrolling back, reading the messages from the past few weeks, and with every message, another piece of my heart broke off, shattering on the cold kitchen floor. The truth was worse than I could have imagined. The plan was clear. They never intended to come for Christmas Eve dinner. They never intended to spend Christmas Day with me either. It was all a lie, a carefully constructed deception, designed to maximize their enjoyment and minimize their time with me, the man who paid for it all. Mark had typed, 3 days ago, "Okay, the hotel near the airport is booked. First-class suite." I felt sick. They were organizing this right under my nose, using my generosity as a springboard for their luxury. Mark continued, "Robert and Linda are covering the limo and the hotel. We leave the house at 3 p.m. on the 24th. Dinner at the hotel's steakhouse at 7 p.m. Cocktails at the Sky Bar at 9 p.m. While I was waiting, while I was pacing the floor, they were eating steak, drinking cocktails." Chloe replied, "Perfect. What about Dad? He's expecting us for his big turkey dinner. He's really excited about it." At least she remembered. At least she felt a shred of guilt. But then Mark replied, and his words destroyed that hope. "Mark, we just don't show. What's he going to do? What's he going to do?" He thought I was powerless, weak. Mark, text him when we're at the hotel saying something came up. A stomach bug. The flight delay. He paused, then sent another message. Mark, or better yet, don't text him at all. He'll figure it out. He's a big boy. He's a big boy. The contempt in those words. The casual cruelty. I wasn't a father to him. I was an obstacle. A chore. An inconvenience. Then Robert, Mark's father, chimed in. I had only met Robert a few times. He was a loud man. Arrogant. He always talked about money. How much he had. How much everyone else didn't. Robert agreed. Thomas is a bit tedious. Tedious. Robert, his Christmas traditions are so boring. All that talk about Sarah and the good old days. It's depressing. My memories of my wife. Depressing. Robert, I'd rather spend the evening sipping expensive scotch than watching him carve a dry bird. My hands gripped the iPad so hard I thought the screen might crack. My knuckles were white, my vision blurred with tears. Courteous, boring, depressing. That's what I was to them. Not a father, not a friend, just an obligation. A boring, depressing obligation. A chore they had to endure. I kept reading. The words blurred through the tears that were streaming down my face now. It wasn't just the abandonment. It was the mockery, the utter lack of respect. But that wasn't the worst part. The real betrayal was still waiting in the shadows. Linda, Mark's mother. She was a thin woman, always impeccably dressed. Always looking down her nose at me. Linda. And frankly, his house smells like sawdust and old books. Sawdust. The smell of my livelihood. The smell of the hard work that paid for their $17,000 vacation. Linda is a nice man, I suppose, but he's so blue-collar, so unrefined. I'm glad we're getting away from the clutter. Unrefined. Blue-collar. The words stung. They were meant to hurt. I thought about the cabinets I built for Chloe's kitchen. The cradle I carved for her when she was born. All that work, all that love, reduced to sawdust and clutter. I felt a wave of nausea. I wanted to throw the iPad against the wall. I wanted to scream until my lungs gave out. This was my daughter, my own flesh and blood. How could she let them talk about me like this? How could she participate in this deception? The pain was so intense it felt like a physical blow, paralyzing me. I kept scrolling. I forced myself to look. I had to know everything. And then I saw a message from Mark that made my blood run cold. It connected all the dots. Claire's warning. David's observation. Mark. This trip is essential. Robert needs to see that my investments are solid. We need this downtime before I deal with Harrison next month. That man is ruthless. Harrison. Who is Harrison? Mark continued. And don't worry about the cash flow. I met Jackson today. Paid him off with the last installment from the ATM. We're clear for now. He won't talk. Jackson, the partner Aunt Clara mentioned. The man David saw Mark paying off by the mailbox. And ATM. He was talking about me. He was using the money I gave them for the wedding. $15,000 I had borrowed against my workshop to pay off his debts. To silence his old partner. To buy his way out of trouble. It seemed Mark wasn't just stressed. He was desperate. He was a fraud, and he was using my money to put on a show for his father, and to cover his tracks. But then I read the message that shattered me completely. The twist that turned my sadness into a cold, hard rage. It was a message from Chloe. My Chloe, if this story is keeping you hooked, drop a subscribe. It really helps us bring you more stories like this. Chloe, I know. He can be a bit much, but try to be nice when you talk about him. I waited for her defense of me. It never came. Chloe, he is paying for the cruise after all. He is basically our walking ATM. A walking ATM, the air rushed out of my lungs. I couldn't breathe. My vision went black for a second. My daughter, my little girl, the one I lifted to hang the star on the tree. She saw me as a transaction, a source of cash. Not a father. And don't worry, she continued. He won't mind being alone. He's used to it since Mom died. She used my grief against me. My loneliness was a convenience for her. A justification for her cruelty. Chloe, he actually prefers it, I think. Besides, he owes us this trip, after being so cheap with the wedding. Cheap with the wedding. She thought I was cheap while her husband was stealing the money I gave them, and she thought I owed her more. She thought my love was a debt she could collect on. I couldn't read anymore. The betrayal was complete, and it was deeper than I ever imagined. I dropped the iPad on the counter. It clattered loudly in the silent kitchen. The sound jolted me back to reality. I stumbled back into the living room and collapsed into my armchair. The silence of the house was deafening now. It wasn't peaceful. It was accusatory. I looked at the photo of Sarah on the mantelpiece. Her smiling face, so full of warmth and kindness. Her eyes always so honest, so clear. They used me, Sarah, I whispered. The tears streamed down my face. Hot, angry tears. Our little girl, she called me an ATM. And Mark, he's a crook. And she helped him. I wrestled with my emotions. Part of me wanted to curl up and disappear, to pretend I never saw the chat, to continue being the dutiful father, the walking ATM, just to keep the peace, just to avoid the confrontation, just to keep my daughter in my life, even if it was a lie. But then I looked at Sarah's photo again. What would she do? Sarah was forgiving, but she was also strong. She had a backbone of steel. She hated users. She hated liars. She hated people who took advantage of kindness. She would never allow herself to be treated like this, and she would never want me to be treated like this either. As I sat there looking at her photo, a cold resolve started to settle over me. The heartbreak was still there, a gaping wound in my chest, but the helplessness was gone. They thought I was weak. They thought I was a pushover, a boring old man who could be manipulated and discarded when I was no longer useful. A tedious blue-collar ATM. They were wrong. I was a carpenter. I built things, and sometimes you have to tear things down before you can rebuild. It was time for some demolition. I picked up my phone. It was nearly midnight. Christmas Day. I went into my contacts and found the number for the travel agency I'd used. Horizon Luxury Cruises. I remembered the agent, Jessica. She was very helpful. She told me about their 24-hour emergency line. I dialed the number. My hand was steady now. My mind was clear. It rang several times. I waited patiently. Finally, a sleepy voice answered. Hello, Horizon Emergency Line. This is Jessica. Jessica, this is Thomas Miller, I said. My voice was calm, professional. I booked a Caribbean cruise through you. Booking reference number HLC 7894. Mr. Miller. Yes, I remember. She sounded more awake now. A very generous gift. Is everything okay? You're not due to travel until tomorrow. I need to cancel it. There was a pause. A long, heavy pause. I could hear the surprise in her silence. Cancel the entire booking? All 4 passengers? Yes, all 4. Sir, it's Christmas Day, she said gently. The departure is in less than 36 hours. The terms and conditions are very strict. Cancellations this late mean huge penalties. I understand, I said. You might lose almost the entire amount, she warned. The cruise fare is non-refundable at this stage. I looked at the spot under the tree. $17,000. I thought about the words in the chat. Tedious, boring, smells like sawdust. Walking ATM. I thought about Mark paying off Jackson with my money. $17,000. Gone. Just like that. A year's worth of work. Flushed down the drain to teach them a lesson. Was it worth it? Was I being petty? Was I letting my anger destroy my relationship with my daughter? But then I realized the relationship was already destroyed. They destroyed it. I was just cleaning up the wreckage. I understand, I repeated. My voice was firm. I don't care about the money. I care about the principle. Jessica seemed to wake up fully now. Her voice was professional, but I detected a hint of sympathy. Maybe she had dealt with situations like this before. There might be some refundable taxes and port fees, she offered. Perhaps a few $1,000s, but the bulk of the fare will be lost. Are you absolutely sure, Mr. Miller? Cancel it, Jessica. Authorize the cancellation and process whatever refund is available. Send the confirmation to my email. All right, Mr. Miller. I'm processing this now. I waited on the line. I listened to the sound of her typing. The clicking keys sounded like nails being hammered into a coffin. The coffin of my relationship with Chloe. A minute later, she said, "Okay, the booking is canceled. The cruise line has been notified. You should receive an email confirmation shortly. Thank you, Jessica. Merry Christmas." "Merry Christmas to you too, sir," she said softly. I hung up the phone. It was done. The Caribbean escape was terminated. But I wasn't finished. I had one more thing to cancel. I remembered the flights. I had booked them separately. I used my airline miles
and a significant amount of cash to upgrade them. First class all the way, Mark had bragged. Not anymore. I logged into the airline's website. I found the reservation. I clicked the cancel flight button. A pop-up warned me that the tickets were partially non-refundable, but I would receive a credit for the cash portion. And the miles would be redeposited into my account, minus a reinstatement fee. I hesitated. Canceling the cruise was one thing. They would lose the vacation. But canceling the flights meant they would be stranded at the airport hotel. They would have to scramble to find new tickets on Christmas Day, at exorbitant prices. Was I going too far? Was I stranding my own daughter? But then I remembered her words. He won't mind being alone. He's used to it. She assumed my compliance. She relied on my weakness. She banked on my love outweighing my self-respect. It was time she learned that actions have consequences. I clicked confirm cancellation. I sat back in my armchair. The house was quiet around me. I felt a strange mix of guilt and triumph. The anger was still there, simmering beneath the surface. But it was overshadowed by a profound sense of peace. I had taken back control. I was no longer the victim. I was no longer the ATM. But I still needed to deal with the Harrison situation. I needed to know how deep the rabbit hole went. But that could wait until morning. I went to bed and fell into a deep, dreamless sleep. The first restful sleep I'd had in months. Christmas morning, 7:00 a.m. I was in the kitchen, making coffee. The aroma filled the air. The sun was just starting to rise, casting a soft pink glow over the snow-covered landscape. It was a beautiful morning, a quiet, peaceful Christmas morning, and then the silence was shattered. My phone rang, loudly, jarringly. The sound cut through the peace like a buzzsaw. I looked at the caller ID, Chloe. I let it ring. I took a sip of my coffee. It was strong and hot. Perfect. It stopped, then immediately started ringing again, and again, and again. I picked up my phone and looked at the call log. The numbers started climbing. 10 missed calls, 20 missed calls, 30 missed calls. The panic was starting early. Text started pouring in, flashing across the screen. A barrage of confusion and anger. "Dad, where are you? We're at the airport." "Dad? Call me ASAP. There's a problem with the booking. They won't let us check in for the cruise. They say the booking doesn't exist." And then the one that made me smile grimly. "Dad, answer your phone. This isn't funny. They must have tried to check in online or at the airport kiosk. They found their entire vacation had vanished into thin air. The luxury suite, the first-class flights, the Caribbean sun, all gone." The missed call counter kept claiming 50, 60, 70. Finally, it reached 76 missed calls. It was 7:45 a.m. The phone rang again, the 77th time. I answered it. "Hello?" My voice was calm, steady. "Da? Da?" Chloe's voice was hysterical, a high-pitched shriek that made me pull the phone away from my ear. I could hear chaos in the background. Mark and Robert shouting, Linda crying, the sound of their perfect world collapsing. "What did you do?"
She screamed. "What do you mean, Chloe?"
I asked calmly, taking another sip of coffee. I looked out the window. A cardinal landed on the bird feeder, bright red against the white snow. "The cruise." They said the cruise is canceled. Her voice was breaking. They said the booking was canceled at midnight. And the flights. "Our flights are gone." She was hyperventilating. "You have to fix this. Robert and Linda are furious. We're stranded at the airport. On Christmas Day." "I know," I said. My voice was even cold. "You know?" The hysteria faded for a moment, replaced by confusion. "What do you mean, you know? Did you call them? Fix it. Call the travel agent. Transfer the money back." I didn't call them to fix it, Chloe, I said. I walked into the living room. I looked at the photo of Sarah. I called them to cancel it. Silence. Dead silence on the other end of the line. Even the background noise seemed to stop. The airport announcements, the shouting, everything faded away. You, what? Her voice was a choked whisper, filled with disbelief and dawning horror.
I canceled the trip, Chloe.
I paid for it, so I canceled it.
It's my money. My decision.
But why? She cried. Why would you do that? This was our Christmas present, our family vacation. It was a present for my family.
Chloe, I said, the anger finally breaking through my calm facade. But it seems my family decided they had better things to do than spend Christmas with me. My voice hardened. They decided I was too tedious, too boring, too blue-collar. Dad, that's not true, she stammered. The lie was weak, pathetic. We were just going to the hotel early. We were going to call you. It was a misunderstanding. Don't lie to me, Chloe, I said, my voice low and dangerous. I'm tired of the lies. I know about Operation Caribbean Escape. Another silence. This one felt heavier, colder, filled with guilt and fear. What are you talking about? She asked, her voice trembling. She was a terrible liar, just like when she was a kid. I read the chat, Chloe, on the iPad you left at my house. I read everything. I heard her gasp, a sharp intake of breath, the sound of being caught. I read about how my house smells like sawdust. I continued, my voice relentless. I read about how depressing my traditions are, how Robert preferred scotch to my dry bird. I paused, letting the words sink in. And I read what you said, Chloe, that I wouldn't mind being alone because I'm used to it since Mom died, that I owed you this trip because I was cheap with the wedding. I waited. I wanted her to feel the weight of her words. And I read the part where you called me a walking ATM. Dad, I didn't mean it like that. She started crying, sobbing into the phone, the crocodile tears turning into real tears of panic and desperation. Mark and his parents, they were just joking. I was just trying to fit in with them. I was pressured. Pressured, I laughed, a cold, bitter sound. You were pressured into mocking your father, into abandoning him on Christmas Eve, into treating him like a transaction. It was a gift, you gave it to us. I gave a gift, Chloe. You treated it like a payment for enduring my company, and then you decided not to even provide the company. I took a deep breath. It was time to drop the real bomb. And I also read about Jackson, I said coldly. I know Mark used the wedding money to pay him off. I know he's in trouble. I know he's a fraud. Silent. This time, the silence was damning. She knew everything. Dad, she stammered. She had no excuse for that. No way to spin it. I didn't want to spend Christmas alone, Chloe. I continued, my voice thick with sadness. But I'd rather be alone than be used and mocked by people who don't respect me. People who think my hard work is just a piggy bank for their fraudulent lifestyle. Suddenly, the phone was snatched from her hand. I heard a scuffle, then a new voice. Mark, his voice was low, venomous. Listen here, you old fool, he snarled. The polished veneer was gone. This was the real Mark, the one Aunt Clara warned me about. You think this is over? You think you can humiliate us like this, in front of my parents? At the airport? I didn't humiliate you, Mark. You humiliated yourselves. I just made sure you did it on your own dime. When we get back, I will ruin you, he threatened. I will sue you for emotional distress, for the cost of the trip. I have lawyers. I know people. His threats hit me like a physical blow. Fear coiled in my stomach. Could he sue me? Could he really ruin me? I was just a simple carpenter. He was a slick marketer with connections. But then I remembered the truth. I remembered the betrayal. I remembered Sarah's strength. I wouldn't back down. I wouldn't let him bully me. You do what you have to do, Mark, I said, my voice cold and steady. But you won't be doing it with my money. And you won't be doing it in my house. Don't bother coming back here. I paused. It was time to twist the knife. And by the way, I hope you enjoy dealing with Mr. Harrison next month. I hear he's ruthless. Silence. I could hear the fear in his breathing. He knew I knew. The game was over. Merry Christmas, I said. I hung up the phone before he could say another word. My hands were shaking, but my heart felt steady. It hurt. Oh God, it hurt so much. It felt like a part of me had died. The part that believed in unconditional love. The part that believed in my daughter. But it was a clean hurt, like setting a broken bone. Necessary pain for healing. The phone didn't ring again. The silence returned. But this time it felt different. It felt earned. I needed to protect myself, and I needed to make sure Mark couldn't hurt anyone else. I called David, my neighbor. David, I need a favor, I said. You mentioned Mark handing off an envelope yesterday, and I know he's in financial trouble. Do you know anyone named Harrison? A lawyer? Or maybe an investor? Harrison? David thought for a moment. Yes, Arthur Harrison. He's both. He's a big deal in the city. He handled my retirement portfolio. He's also known for being a tough investor. Very demanding. Why? I think my son-in-law, Mark, owes him money. A lot of money. And I think Mark is running a scam. David whistled low. If Mark owes Arthur Harrison money, he's in big trouble. Harrison doesn't mess around. He destroys people who cross him. Do you need his number, Thomas? Yes, David. I do. I called Mr. Harrison's office. It was Christmas Day, but I left a message. Mr. Harrison, my name is Thomas Miller. I believe we have a mutual acquaintance. Mark Reynolds. I have information that might interest you regarding his dealings with a man named Jackson and his current financial situation. I didn't expect a reply, but an hour later my phone rang. Mr. Miller, this is Arthur Harrison. His voice was deep, authoritative. David speaks very highly of you. What information do you have regarding Mark Reynolds? I told him everything. The $17,000 cruise, the iPad, the mention of his name, the payoff to Jackson, the $15,000 wedding money that vanished, the SUV I co-signed for. Harrison listened patiently. He didn't interrupt. When I finished, he was silent for a moment. Then he dropped the bombshell. Mr. Miller, he said finally, you've confirmed my suspicions, and you filled in the missing pieces. Mark Reynolds is running a Ponzi scheme. His digital marketing business is a house of cards. It's collapsing. The secret was out. Mark wasn't just stressed. He was a criminal. He owes me and several other investors over $500,000, Harrison continued. $500,000. The scale of it was staggering. He was using this cruise to impress his father, hoping for a bailout before his next quarterly report, Harrison explained. He's been stalling us for months. The payment to Jackson was hush money. Jackson was threatening to expose him to the authorities. He used my money to do it, I said, my voice tight with anger. Yes, he did, Harrison said grimly. He's a con artist, Mr. Miller, Harrison said, and I'm afraid he's pulled your daughter into his mess. You need to protect your assets, immediately. The SUV, I said, my blood running cold. I co-signed the loan. I'll handle it, Harrison said firmly. My team will track it down and repossess it today. He defaulted on the payments months ago. The bank was already looking for it. You won't be liable. And Mark? I asked. We are pressing charges, Harrison said. His voice was cold, ruthless, just as Mark had described. Fraud. Embezzlement. He's going to jail for a long time. Thank you, Mr. Miller. You did the right thing. I hung up the phone. I felt vindicated, but also heartbroken. Chloe had married a criminal, and she had chosen him over me. Later that afternoon, I was sitting in my living room, reading a book when a car pulled up in my driveway. I looked out the window. It wasn't Chloe, it was David. He walked up to the front door. He was carrying a large aluminum tray, covered in foil, and a bottle of wine. I opened the door. He stood there, a gentle smile on his face. Hey, Thomas, he said softly. My wife made too much lasagna. Thought you might be hungry. I looked at him, my old friend, and I felt a wave of gratitude wash over me. Come on in, David, I said, stepping aside. We sat in my dining room. I cleared away the unused plates and glasses from the night before. We ate the lasagna. It was delicious. Warm, cheesy, comforting. We talked about his kids, about my work, about the neighborhood. We didn't talk about Chloe. We didn't talk about Mark. We didn't need to. David knew. He understood.
But friendship, that was real family.
As the evening wound down, I looked at the photo of Sarah on the mantelpiece. A wave of sadness washed over me, but it was mixed with a strange sense of peace. I had lost my daughter today, the little girl who used to hang the star on the tree, but I had found my self-respect. I had honored Sarah's memory by being strong, by refusing to be used. A few days later, I received an email from the travel agency. Jessica had managed to negotiate a partial refund from the cruise line, citing the extenuating circumstances. Between the refunded port fees, the taxes, and the partial refund, almost $5,000 was back in my account. It wasn't the full amount, but it was something. I took the money and went to the local animal shelter. The place where Chloe had begged for that puppy 20 years ago. I wrote a check for $5,000 and handed it to the director. "Mr. Miller, this is incredibly generous," she said, her eyes wide with surprise. "It's in memory of my wife, Sarah," I said. She loved animals. She believed in unconditional love, something I was still learning about. I walked back to my truck. The sun was shining. The snow was melting. It felt like a new beginning. Mark was arrested a week later at his office. The news spread like wildfire. Robert and Linda refused to bail him out. They were furious, not at their son's crimes, but at the embarrassment. They had to use their own money to buy expensive last-minute tickets home from the airport on Christmas Day. The SUV was repossessed. Harrison was ruthless, indeed. Chloe showed up at my door a few weeks later. She looked tired, broken. The expensive clothes were gone. The bright red nail polish was chipped. She cried. She apologized. She said she was ashamed. She said she missed me. She said she was filing for divorce. She claimed she didn't know the full extent of the Ponzi scheme, only that Mark was in trouble. I believed her, but it didn't change what she had done. It didn't change the words she typed. "I love you, Chloe," I said. My voice was gentle but firm. "But I don't trust you. Not anymore." She looked devastated. But she understood. "Can we start over, Dad?" she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "I don't know," I said honestly. "It will take time. I realize that I'm a builder. I build houses, and the most important part of any house is the foundation. Trust, respect. If the foundation is cracked, the whole house falls apart. Our foundation was demolished, and it takes a long time to rebuild trust. Years maybe, maybe never. Money is just wood and nails," Sarah used to say. "Use it to build something beautiful. Sometimes, before you can build something beautiful, you have to tear down what's broken. And sometimes, the most beautiful thing you can build is a boundary." The walking ATM was officially closed for business. Thanks for listening. Please rate our story in the comments. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe. Your support means a lot, because your time matters.